Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. The Supreme Court unanimously sided with a Catholic foster agency in a dispute against Philadelphia's oppression of religious practice. It's been revealed the November examination of Fulton County's absentee ballots exposed serious voter irregularities. A NASA scientist is sentenced for lying about his ties with the CCP. This incident is, however, only the tip of the iceberg. Former President Trump announced his first rally will be held in Cleveland, Ohio, with more to follow. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Today we open the show with some updates from the Supreme Court. Yesterday, Catholic Social Services won a unanimous vote from the Supreme Court. The Catholic Foster Care Agency in Philadelphia was free to turn away same-sex couples as foster parents. The Catholic School Services, CSS, sued the city after being ordered not to exclude same-sex couples from certification. CSS believes marriage is a sacred bond between a man and a woman, and that certification of prospective foster families is an endorsement of their relationship. The organization refuses to certify unmarried couples or same-sex married couples. In a 9-0 ruling, the High Court found that Philadelphia violated the First Amendment regarding religious freedom. The ruling says, Catholic Social Services seek only an accommodation that will allow it to continue servicing the children of Philadelphia in a manner consistent with its religious beliefs. It does not seek to impose those beliefs on anyone else. The city's actions burden CSS's religious exercise by forcing it either to curtail its mission or to certify same-sex couples as foster parents in violation of its religious beliefs. The case is considered a massive victory to social conservatives. Today, religious individuals and faith-based organizations are constantly harassed and discriminated against by the left and sometimes the government because of their religious beliefs. With the decision, the High Court is carving out legal protections for people with religious objections to same-sex marriage. In another ruling from yesterday, the Supreme Court dealt a major setback to the GOP's challenge to the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. 18 Republican-led states want the court to overturn Obamacare. In 2012, the High Court redefined the individual mandate penalty for not buying health insurance as a tax. The state argues the requirement for nearly all Americans to obtain health insurance or pay an income tax penalty is unconstitutional. For that reason, they said, the entire law must be scrapped. By a vote of 7-2, the High Court for the third time ruled the plaintiff, the 18 states, lacked legal standing. To have standing, Article 3 of the Constitution says, in a lawsuit, a party must show sufficient legal interest and injury to participate in the case. Two of Trump's appointees, Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, sided with the majority. Justice Samuel Alito and Neil Gorsuch disagreed with the court's ruling. In a dissenting opinion, Alito wrote, Texas and the other state plaintiffs have standing, and now that the tax imposed by the individual mandate is set at $0, the mandate cannot be sustained under the taxing power. As a result, it is clearly unconstitutional, and to the extent that the provision of the ACA that burden the states are inextricably linked to the individual mandate. In the 2008 election cycle, then-candidate Barack Obama promised voters that his health care plan would cut annual premiums by $2,500. Instead, premiums have skyrocketed. Premiums of the average employer-sponsored family health went just over $13,000 in 2009 to over $20,000 in 2019. Many consumers can no longer afford health care premiums and lost insurance coverage. By far, Florida is the first and the only state that answered Arizona and Texas's call for additional law enforcement assistance at the border. Governor Ron DeSantis announced on Wednesday that he'll be sending help to the two states. Law enforcement officials from a number of sheriff's offices, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation, and Florida Highway Patrol personnel will be sent to the border states. DeSantis said that the problems at the border are impacting the entire nation.
We're here today because we have problems in Florida that are not organic to Florida, that we've been forced to deal with over many years, but particularly over the last 6 months. because of the failure of the Biden administration to secure our southern border and indeed to really do anything constructive about what is going on. Now, it's like anything anyone's ever seen down there. You have caravans that are making their way and pouring across the border. You absolutely have the cartels that are taking full advantage of what is going on down near our southern border. And so this has an impact nationwide. And I can tell you, you talk to some of these sheriffs, particularly North Florida sheriffs in Northwest Florida, who are dealing with the meth problem that we're seeing, that is really, really ravaging communities, particularly in the northern part of our state. That meth, if you go back 10, 20 years ago, you find these places where they'd be cooking this stuff up locally. That's not what's happening now. It's almost all coming across the southern border.
The Florida governor said that he's going to help Arizona and Texas with whatever they need. In the past, the two states also helped Florida during emergencies like weather disasters. At this time, an exact role has not been provided for Florida law enforcement, but they've been told the services would be for a minimum of 16 days. Also in Florida, former President Trump announced he'll resume campaign-style rallies starting next week. The first post-White House rally will take place at the Lorain County Fairgrounds in Cleveland, Ohio on June 26th. At the event, Trump will endorse former advisor Max Miller, who's running for Congress. Other than Ohio, the former president told OAN last month that he plans to hold rallies in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina in the near future. On Wednesday night, during an exclusive interview on Hannity, Trump commented on the latest development in the coronavirus lab leak theory. He said while the pandemic is a horrible experience that claimed more than 3 million lives across the globe, he believed it was an accident from the lab. Trump said, "I really hope and I believe it was incompetence, but we have to find out more about it. Why did it happen? How did it happen? And how could anybody be so incompetent?" Trump was among the first to suggest a lab leak might have been the source of the outbreak back in April 2020. The lab leak theory was initially dismissed as a conspiracy theory by Democrats and mainstream media. But in recent months, things took a sharp turn, and the theory is now widely accepted as a serious possibility. Sources from the intelligence community disclosed that the sudden change in attitude about the theory was because of the high-ranking Chinese defector who has direct knowledge of the CCP's special weapon programs. About 2 weeks ago, also on the Hannity Show, Senator Rand Paul blasted Dr. Anthony Fauci. With all the evidence pointing to the Wuhan lab, Fauci said he still trusts the Chinese scientist. Paul said in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, there are far worse viruses. The COVID-19 virus has about a 1% mortality rate and 3.5 million people have died. But the lab has been experimenting with viruses that have a 15% mortality rate. Can you imagine? If it had been that virus that had escaped, it would mean 50 million people dead by now. And the biggest scandal of all is American tax dollars were used to fund the gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab through Dr. Fauci as the director of NIAID at the National Institute of Health.
You know, there's been no more prominent scientist in favor of gain-of-function research than Dr. Fauci. He still hasn't backed off of that position. He believes that it's okay to take animal viruses, make them into superviruses to infect humans, even if a pandemic should occur. He says, oh, the research is worth it. But, you know, there's a host of other scientists in this field, and they say it's not worth it at all, that we haven't learned anything. All we've done is put ourselves at risk. But this research is being done in the United States as well. It's very, very dangerous.
This type of research to study a virus and make it more deadly and infectious to human beings is senseless. There is no possible reason to justify it. It should be stopped in the United States as well. Now, before we continue, please hit that like button and subscribe. And most importantly, share this video with your friends and family. Word of mouth is the most effective way to spread the truth. If you want to support Eye Opener, please consider donating to the show or purchase a mug that matters. You can find the link in the description below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Salute. In Albemarle County, Virginia, a school administrator told parents that they aren't able to opt out their children from critical race theory lessons because the concept is woven throughout the entire curriculum. In a video clip released Wednesday, Joseph T. Henley Middle School's principal, Beth Costa, was talking about how students can opt out of CRT like other individual texts or lessons, but District Diversity Resource teacher Chris Booz stepped in and overruled the principal's statement.
Dr. Costa, can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
I just want to tell, in regard to the opting out question, this work is happening in all content areas. So teachers across the county are incorporating anti-racism work into their content. So if you're opting out of these advisory lessons, these topics and these lessons and this concept is going to be woven through in all of their classes in Albemarle County.
Albemarle County's mission statement claims personal and institutional racism has historically existed and continues to exist. The purpose of the policy is to dismantle systemic racism and establish a system of equity. However, CRT is an intrinsically racist ideology under which individuals aren't judged based on their merit, but solely on their skin color. Parents should never be intimidated by any school authority or official telling you it's impossible to stop the concept being taught to your children. CRT is pushed by a small fraction of society, the radical left, but they happen to have a very big voice. So now we need to make a louder voice than them to expose the truth about this anti-American narrative. In fact, many states and school districts, including Florida, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, have banned teaching critical race theory from public schools. Audit documents submitted by Georgia Fulton County exposed significant voter irregularities. Last November, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger hired contractor Seven Hills Strategy to audit Fulton County. The contractor recorded multiple troubling issues that could be counted as election tabulation malpractice. For example, the audit found that on the night before Election Day, an unknown person removed a suitcase of sensitive election data known as polls pads for authentication of voters. Several cases containing sensitive election materials were also left on a warehouse loading dock without supervision. More critical to election integrity, the report exposed a series of problems regarding the counting of mail-in ballots. 1. More than 100 batches of absentee ballots, each containing 100 or more ballots, weren't recorded in the handwritten logs. It means over 10,000 ballots may be missing. 2. More than 24 batches of absentee ballots have been double scanned on the tally sheets. 3. 5 sequential batches of absentee ballots appeared with the exact same vote count of 392 for Joe Biden, 96 for Donald Trump, and 3 for Libertarian Joe Jorgensen. This is statistically impossible. It means a batch of roughly 500 votes got duplicated 5 times. 4. Many control sheets for absentee ballot batches didn't check a box indicating the ballot came from a secure container. Does it mean those ballots were stored insecurely? These problems could possibly impact the counting of tens of thousands of ballots, keeping in mind that Biden only won the state by less than 12,000 votes. The Secretary of State now admits the county's election management needs dramatic repair. Raffensperger said, "It is no secret that Fulton has had issues in their election department for decades." However, the Secretary still denies that it could be a nefarious act rather than incompetence. He said the contractor did not see any evidence of despite having full access, but he saw continued mismanagement, miscommunication, unpreparedness, and sloppiness. How can this decades-long, grossly incompetent Fulton County Election Office not lead to more serious issues? Raffensperger's claims is self-contradictory. At the very least, a thorough forensic examination of Fulton County's election is absolutely necessary. A senior NASA scientist pleaded guilty on June 16th to lying about his ties to the CCP's Thousand Talents program. The program harvests foreign technology and intellectual property through the false promise of recognition and open sharing. However, its sole purpose is to advance the CCP's interests. In America, the program has been a cover to entice members of academia and industry with research grants to share information, which they would otherwise keep confidential. Maya Mayapin of California joined NASA in 1996 and has been the chief scientist for exploration technology since 2006. He also held professorship in China, South Korea, and Japan, but concealed these relationships from NASA and the Office of Government Ethics. During an October 2020 interview with the FBI and NASA, the scientist lied that he wasn't a member of the CCP's talent program and didn't hold professorship in China. Mayapin was charged with one count of making false statements, which carries a 5-year maximum prison sentence and a maximum fine of $250,000. But under his plea agreement, he was sentenced to 30 days in prison in order to pay a fine of $100,000. In early 2020, Charles Lieber, chair of Harvard University's chemistry department and prominent nanotechnology expert, was arrested for failing to disclose his relationship to Chinese universities and his participation in the very same talent program. These instances are just the tip of the iceberg of the CCP's silent quest to become the global scientific leader. According to a Senate committee report, the 1,000 Talents Plan is one of more than 200 CCP talent recruitment programs. These programs drew almost 60,000 professionals between 2008 and 2016. Since the plan's 2008 launch, China's technology development and intellectual property portfolio has surged. In 2019, China overtook the U.S. for the first time in filing the most international patents. But how many of these patents are their own work is another question. $600 billion, that's the estimated amount that IP theft costs the American economy annually, and the CCP is the principal source of the theft. Aside from intellectual property issues, there are serious human rights concerns. Technologies transferred to China under the Talents program have been used in the oppression of Uyghurs and other religious groups. The nationwide surveillance system, including facial recognition technology, is one of them. Do you believe aliens exist? The Pentagon is expected to release its findings on what it knows about UFOs, or unexplained aerial phenomena, UAPs, next Friday. While a more detailed classified report will remain secret, an unclassified version will be made public. On June 16th, the Navy and FBI officials gave a highly confidential briefing on UAPs to a House Intelligence Committee. Some lawmakers also received a peek at the classified report. Although they wouldn't say what they saw, some congressmen are seriously concerned about the threat of UAPs to national security. Representative Sean Maloney told the New York Post there are legitimate questions involving the safety and security of our personnel and our operations and our sensitive activities, and we all know that there's a proliferation of technologies out there. Representative Tim Burchett, after the Wednesday briefing, said, "Clearly something's going on that we can't handle." Luis Elizondo, the former head of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, said in an interview, UFOs or UAPs have interfered with and actually brought offline the nation's nuclear capabilities. He said through observations, they are quite convinced that we're dealing with a technology that's multi-generational. In other words, several generations ahead of what we consider next generation technology. It's something that could be anywhere between 50 to 1,000 years ahead of us. Live long and prosper, my friends. And that's it for today, my friends. Check out the playlist right here for more eye-opening content. You can join me on the Eye Opener Telegram chat room and follow me on Newmaker, Gab, and Parler. Don't forget, sign up to our email list so that we can stay in contact with each other. I'd like to thank you all, and I'll see you next time.